So after again many days, last time we had the session in October towards when the now the Damodar Vrata is ended, and now again we have the session of His Holiness Bhanu Swami Maharaj. Last time Maharaj was discussing about the Ruchi stage, and further Maharaj discussed about Asakti. Actually, a dull-headed person like me is like a fool who can't understand, even though a great master is trying to explain and trying to somehow push me towards Krishna, but I am not able to understand. So therefore I again requested Maharaj that kindly please explain again about the Asakti stage, so that a dull-headed person like me can understand something by his mercy. Maharaj is so kind and compassionate on fallen souls like me that he very compassionately, painstakingly again and again explains the same thing which a dull-headed person doesn't understand. So let us request again Maharaj to explain about Asakti. And then after this stage discussion is over, today Maharaj will also discuss about the 18.67-68 verses, which are about the glories of giving the message of Bhagavad Gita, because the next month, December, is coming up, and December is the marathon month throughout the whole world for Srila Prabhupada's distribution of books, and one of the main books is Bhagavad Gita. So therefore the message of Gita to distribute, we will get inspiration from Maharaj today. Maharaj will explain about 18.67 and 68.
Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamane Namaste Saraswata Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Chatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasri Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So actually the Madhurya Kadambini is tracing the development of bhakti from faith to prema. After prema, it doesn't describe higher stages. Describes those experiences that we have while we still have a material body. So the first stage was shraddha, or faith. And this gradually turns into activities. So we can say that the shraddha itself is an inclination of the jiva, the atma. It's not a mental thing. It's the orientation of the jiva. In the material world, the jiva is interested in material enjoyment. And when the jiva becomes interested in the Supreme Lord and a relationship with the Supreme Lord, then we call that faith. But the acharyas like Jiva Goswami, they carefully distinguish between faith and bhakti. Faith is the qualification or prerequisite to bhakti, so therefore it cannot be bhakti. Just as the qualification for university is some high school degree or whatever. So the high school degree is also study, and it's also mathematics or whatever, but we don't call that university. It's a qualification to get into university. So shraddha is a qualification to enter into the process of bhakti. With that, we begin the process of bhakti proper, which is described as cultivation of the relationship with Krishna. So first we have an inclination, then we start cultivating somehow or other. That's Krishna Anusilanam. We consciously cultivate a relationship. And the first way of doing that is by engagement of the senses. So engagement of the senses is called sadhana bhakti. But sadhana means to attain a goal. So the goal of sadhana is bhava. Bhava is technically defined as the sthayi bhava, which is not an action, but it's a relationship, experience of a relationship with the Lord, such as Shanta Dasya Sakya Vatsalya or Madhurya. So the engagement of the senses leads to that bhava, which is defined also as Claudini and Samvit Shaktis. That's the internal energy of the Lord entering into the Tatastha Shakti, that is the jiva. We have two different Shaktis here. We have the internal energy and the Jiva Shakti. So the Jiva Shakti gets an addition of the internal Shakti, which manifests in Bhava. So in that definition of bhakti given in the Nectar devotion for sadhana, it says that by engagement of the senses, one attains to bhava. But the bhava manifests, it's not created, because anything in the spiritual world cannot be created, it is eternal. So therefore it's manifested, the internal energy, which is eternal, manifests in the jiva as this certain bhava. And of course the commentary is that bhava exists in the spiritual world in the different associates of the Lord. Those are the Siddha devotees. They have that Hladini Samvit Shakti bhava within themselves. So this manifests within the jiva and the material with the sadhana. So the whole process from Shraddha onwards is the cultivation of that relationship to get to the bhava stage. So Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur has traced the different stages. So we have association, mercy, by which we learn the process of sadhana. And it goes through different stages. So we get the anartana vritti stage. And then we get of course we get bhajana kriya, the process itself. And then we get the anartana vritti. And then we get nishta, and we get ruchi, and we get asakti. That's all sadhana. And then bhava is the goal. So that's separate, it's not sadhana anymore. So all of this is tracing two things. One is destruction of anarthas. So we have anartha nivritti. And that's one stage, but it goes to nishta, ruchi, and asakti. So while that's happening, though we call the one stage anartha nivritti, that anartha nivritti is continuously going on into nishta, ruchi, and asakti, and even in bhava. So it's not just anartha nivritti is one stage, it's actually a continuous stage. However, we distinguish these different stages after anartha nivritti as nishta, ruchi, and asakti, and then bhava. So these are names given to the increase in attraction to Krishna. The first stage is anartha nivritti, so there the emphasis is upon the anarthas. So that's natural because as we begin bhakti, we go through bhajana kriya, anartha nivritti, and we come to nishta, the anarthas are more prominent. And when we get to nishta, they become a little less prominent. So nishta means steadiness. So the anarthas do not bother us. They do not disturb our sadhana. But then we get to ruchi and asakti, the attraction to Krishna becomes much stronger, and the attraction to Maya becomes weaker and weaker and weaker. So the stronger that the bhakti becomes in the jiva, the less the anarthas are manifest, they become destroyed. And we had different types of anarthas mentioned. There was anarthas coming from sinful activities, from pious activities, from bhakti, like the weeds of bhakti, and then from aparads, or offenses. So we have four types of things. So they're gradually dissipated. So the anarthas become weaker and weaker. Nishta, slightly more attraction to bhakti and a little bit less to strength for anarthas. So therefore, one can practice steadily. And then the significantly more is the attraction to Krishna and less attraction to Maya. So that was ruchi stage. So it's called ruchi because more attraction to the process of bhakti. And then asakti is distinguished because there's more attraction to Krishna and less interest in material objects, less anarthas are manifest. So asakti means attachment. So, of course, there's also taste, like ruchi, same thing, if someone has obvious taste for the Lord. But the distinction is made here that in ruchi, the taste is for the processes of bhakti, like hearing and chanting, etc. And in asakti, then the attachment is for Krishna himself, not the process. Of course, it's still attraction for the process, but one becomes more attracted to Krishna, which means that through the process of bhakti, gradually, as bhakti becomes stronger, Krishna reveals himself more. So the process is attractive in ruchi, but then there's more attraction to Krishna in asakti. So we had the image of the plant. The seed of bhakti was planted, and then the actions of bhakti in terms of watering the plant began, and it sprouted, and it grew leaves of kleshagni and supada, destruction of anarthas and manifestation of good qualities, ultimately attraction to Krishna. And as we go more, then the attraction to Krishna becomes stronger and stronger. We get to nishta, and then we get to ruchi, and then finally we get flower buds appearing on that creeper. So that's asakti stage. And then in bhava stage, the flower blooms. So this is, we say, the prior stage of bhava, but quite close to it because the flower is there, so to speak. In bhava, one can realize the Lord. So in a sakti stage, Krishna is a little bit manifesting. And attraction becomes for Krishna. So in ruchi, there was an emphasis on a taste for the bhajana. And Krishna is also there, obviously, it's all the way through. But in asakti, Krishna is a little bit more manifested, so therefore Krishna becomes the object of taste within asakti stage. So it means attachment to Krishna. And of course, it doesn't mean that there is no taste for Krishna. There's also taste for Krishna and taste for the process of worship and whatever, but more attraction to Krishna. Krishna becomes relishable in the chanting of the name and in hearing, etc. And of course, because the anarthas are less in asakti stage, one can concentrate upon the Lord more. And because there is a taste for Krishna, very, very easy to fix the mind on Krishna. In ruchi, still an effort is required to withdraw the mind from material objects and concentrate on the Lord, but in asakti, very spontaneously, one concentrates on Krishna. Why? Because the Atma has very, very strong attraction to Krishna, and therefore that manifests in the mind also. So it's not this mind operating, it's the jiva has very strong attraction to Krishna at this point. So then naturally that affects the mind, and it's easy for the mind to concentrate on the Lord. So in ruchi, obviously, still some anarthas can interfere, but in asakti, much, much less. Like that. So in a ruchi stage, the mind, the devotee is trying to concentrate, and he has a taste for the Lord, but then sometimes he's just not thinking of the Lord, and he can't even detect when he's thinking of something else. But suddenly his mind is thinking of material things. So sometimes it's spontaneous, it goes back to material things. But in asakti stage, one concentrates more on the Lord. And then it is said the Lord appears in his heart, not directly, because that's bhava stage, but like a reflection. So there's almost a realization of the Lord, a shadow realization of the Lord at this point, in asakti stage. So in other words, it's not heart, of course, means the jiva can start developing some sort of perception of the Lord. Not very clear, but something is there. So what are the characteristics in asakti stage? He's attached to devotees and hearing from them. This is, of course, a anga of bhakti from the very beginning stages. And we know that sadhu sangha is important in all stages. But we found that the attraction to bhakti becomes more and more in ruchi and then in asakti. So, very spontaneously, the devotee in asakti is attracted to devotees because he wants to hear about Krishna. Krishna is very attractive to him, so he goes to devotees to hear about that. And he begins to see everything in relation to attaining Krishna. The Uttamadhikari is defined as a person who sees Krishna everywhere. And everything is in relation to Krishna. So in asakti stage, he has not yet attained Krishna, but he's trying to see everything in relation to that. So there's some nice description there, how he looks at everything and he interprets it in terms of signs of Krishna showing mercy on him. So he's constantly thinking of how to attain Krishna. Consequently, not much interest in the material world at this point. He has natural renunciation. Not interested in material affairs, material relationships, and material opinions, material body. He's very, very disinterested in this. Because he's only trying to attain Krishna, which is beyond the material body. When asked what is the matter by friends, he will remain silent and sometimes hide his feelings. His friends will apologize. He was all right before, but now his intelligence is being covered. So they think something's wrong with him at this point. Maybe he's going crazy. The followers of Vedanta will conclude he's an idiot by birth. Because people into Vedanta are more interested in jnana, study of scriptures, etc. But he is more interested in attaining the Lord, not in study of scriptures and Brahman, etc. Followers of the Vedic ritual consider him fallen from purity. He's no longer interested in all of the rules and regulations of the varnashram system, which are basically to preserve purity. The non-devotees will say he's amassed some great treasure. They will think that somehow he's like a greedy person and he's hiding something. These are non-material persons. Offenders will say he's pretending. So, in this way, various persons will look at him in different ways, but they won't appreciate that he is has a taste for the Lord and is very close to realizing him. So he has become detached from everything in the material world. But people cannot understand that by seeing him. But the devotee, far from consideration of respect and disrespect, having fallen to the current of the great celestial river of attachment to the Lord, will simply continue his attempts to come closer to the Lord. So we saw that the description was, he is always trying to attain the Lord. He got some strong desire to attain the Lord, and he looks in the material world for signs of that attainment at all times. So completely absorbed in the Lord. So that's the position of asakti, the body of devotional service. Okay, that finishes asakti. Any questions?
Generally, it is said that even if a devotee is experiencing bhava, he would generally not manifest externally. He will keep those symptoms internally. So also Vishwachakravati of wife will not show herself in front of people, but only in front of husband. So similarly, how is it that the other devotees, other people, offenders, Vedantis, etc., they are coming to know about his sort of attachment to Lord? And
well, actually they don't. They just see he's detached from everything in the material world. And they say he's crazy, maybe he's this or that. They don't see anything else. They can't see that attraction to Krishna at all. So in Bhava and later Prema, then gradually the symptoms of that attraction become obvious, not just detachment, but attraction to Krishna in the form of sattvika bhavas, etc. Particularly the sattvika bhavas, because they are spontaneous. The other things you could hide from people, like service to the Lord, etc. You don't have to do it publicly. But sattvika bhavas are spontaneous manifestations, such as crying and fainting and choking of the voice, etc., because of experience of the Lord. So in the beginning stages, there's different stages of these sattvika bhavas. A very weak one, a little bit stronger, much stronger, and most strong. And these will manifest as one progresses into prema, stronger and stronger. In bhava, there's a few symptoms which can be hidden. In prema, then there's more symptoms, and it's more difficult to suppress them. And in fact, in stronger prema, they cannot be suppressed at all. So therefore, the higher the prema, then the more the symptoms manifest simultaneously, and the more difficult it is to suppress them.
Also like Baladev Bhushan says that the Krishna's recommendation in the Gita is that even that Arjuna should not become nir-apeksha, he should become a parinishchita bhakti, which means that he should not be externally showing detachment in such a way that people are confused. Whereas he should actually, though he is internally very advanced, but externally continue to do the actions which are necessary for people in general to see a good example.
Yeah.
So how this would be coming in that? Because now people are seeing him so detached externally.
We have two things: detachment and then ecstatic symptoms that will gradually increase as we go into bhava and prema. Now, in terms of Baladev Vidyabhushan's definition, we have the sanishta, and then the parinishita, and then the nirapeksha. So the parinishita and the nirapeksha are both kind of on the same level. That is not attached to anything in the material world, whereas the parinishita is still a little attached to the varnashram system. So they're on a higher level. Now the parinishita, he follows the rules as much as he can, whereas the parinishita completely disregards them. But they're kind of equal. Now the parinishita, of course, may have difficulty in doing that, but he does that out of duty, to set an example for others. So we see that the Pandavas, of course they're Nityasiddhas, but then they're playing the role of Kshatriyas. So they play the role of Kshatriyas, and they don't give that up. Of course, we see that later in life they did give everything up. They gave up the kingdom and everything at a certain point. But that was also following the varnashram system, like vanaprastha or whatever. But they were very happy to give those things up because it freed them from responsibilities, and they could just think of the Supreme Lord at that time. So part of this is Leela. The Lord wills them to do certain things out of Leela. So he willed that the Pandavas rule the kingdom for a certain number of years. So then they feel obligated, they must do that. Similarly, we have other persons like the Manus, who are not Nityasiddhas necessarily, and their descendants like Ambarish, etc. So they also follow because, again, they're Kshatriyas, they're kings, they have to establish dharma and set an example for people. But they may be very advanced devotees also, so they will act in that way. So we have those persons also. So they're all parinishtas devotees. Some may find that they either they have no interest in ruling at all, or they don't have duties imposed on to the same extent because they're not Kshatriyas or whatever, so they may renounce at a certain point out of attachment, such as Bharat Maharaj. He renounced, and then he got to Bhava stage by that, and Bhava stage, obviously, he had no interest in material things at all, so he waited until a certain period of time, and then he became like a Nirapeksha devotee, and completely became involved in worshiping the Lord and doing nothing else. So they had no real duties to fulfill at that point, after renouncing. And then there's others who may not be so old, but then they will, out of simply complete attachment to the Lord, they cannot control themselves, so they completely renounce. And we see that in case of some of the maybe some of the king's family. They just simply want to renounce everything and practice bhakti, and they don't involve in the kingdom at all. That may be there also. So according to the situation, they will act for a certain period of time, but usually after acting as a party initiative, then they renounce at a certain point, and then they are completely free from responsibilities of that time. So we can say part of it is Leela of the Supreme Lord and certain duties they have in relation to the Lord, that they will do this. We see that Ambarish, he stayed in that role, but actually he was only doing bhakti, and he assigned all of the duties to his ministers, and he didn't do anything. So he avoided everything, and just very superficially he was the king, but everything was done by somebody else, and he was only doing devotional activities. So he was, at that stage where he actually renounced everything, but just kept the name of the king and had other people do all the duties.
Well, so in case of Ambarish, it was possible for him to do so, probably circumstances arranged. Like at the same time, like King Pradapudra was a protector of Dharma for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because otherwise the Muslims were attacking, etc. So he was still ruling, and in fact it is said that he was also conquering the neighborhood kingdoms, etc. Yeah. So though he is also received the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and definitely we can say that he is at Bhava at least, so still he continued to do those duties because it was necessary for the protection of the devotees as well as Dharma. So does it not mean to say that actually if there is a necessity, even these devotees, as sometimes Prabhupada says that Mahabhagavad will also act as Madhyama. So does is it a clear, is it the
well, of course also something like the Pandavas, duty, out of duty for certain purposes, they had to establish Dharma in the world, so they did it on behalf of the Lord, they acted as the Lord instruments, so the Lord also wills them to do certain things, and therefore they do it for the, in this case for protecting Jagannath, we can say he did his will of the Supreme Lord, and he followed that will. So in other words, of course we can say that's also part of their bhava in one sense, because this way they get mercy from the Lord, they're doing something and pleasing the Lord by that as well.
So basically that means it's not that renouncing or not renouncing is a major symptom, but basically carrying on internally the bhakti for the Lord, and if it's necessary for service of the Lord, then we do external actions. Now sometimes what happens, Maharaj, like when young devotees who are in their both young in age as well as young in their Krishna consciousness, that means they may not be even at Nishta. So such devotees, when they hear such stages, sometimes there is a feeling of imitation, and therefore, and also sincerity to not become attached to material world, but at the same time some sort of imitation also comes. So then these devotees may want to immediately renounce without seeing what's going on with the other people, insensitivity to say the people of this world, etc. And also one's own advancement has not yet come. So what is the advice we should give to the young devotees who are just say in the age of 18, 20, 24, 22, and they may not be advanced also because they have just begun the process 2-3 years.
This is something like the symptom of the neophyte described here in the Madhurya Kadambini. They had different symptoms like utsaha, mai, etc. So one of them was juda vikalpa. They're very enthusiastic to do something because they see some example in scripture. So one day they're enthusiastic to take sannyas or become a babaji. Another time they want to be a grihasta. Their mind is very fickle. So in the beginning stage it's very difficult to decide long-term goals because their qualification is not being fixed yet. Their level is still quite new. So they can be attracted to different things, but it's all rather fickle at that stage. And it's only by practicing for some time that they will see their particular stage and their inclination, etc., and what is the best level at which they can perform bhakti steadily. So in the beginning stages, they may have a little confusion about that. But when they've reached that, say, nishta stage, then they can more clearly see what is necessary for them for their advancement.
Sometimes though person may try, but then he is not yet becoming a Nishtita Bhakta. So at that time, now the age is also going on. So if somebody becomes 25, 26, 27, and yet he is still confused or still not at Nishtha stage, then what should he decide now?
Well, it's always better to be safe, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that renunciation should not be external, it should be natural. So Sahaj Vairagya. And as we see here, as one goes through the different stages, then spontaneously that detachment is there. These different persons in different stages are not cultivating detachment. It just happens because their attachment to Krishna increases. So naturally, they have no interest in material affairs, etc., etc., etc. So this happens in a gradual way. As one goes from Nishta to Rushti to Sakti, the material attraction becomes minimal. And the attraction to Krishna becomes more. So that's because of the practice of bhakti, not because of a practice of renunciation. So in the Varnashram system, we can say the ashramas, Vanaprastha and Sannyas, are external forms to inspire you to come to a certain level. And hopefully the person is qualified and for those things. But if they're not, then they find it very difficult to practice, and they will fail in those endeavors. So we can say those are external forms, but in terms of bhakti, the renunciation is naturally manifested through the strength of bhakti, increase of the strength of bhakti, which is, we can say, a better way of doing it. For that reason, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu put less emphasis upon the whole Varnashram system as being external. And he said, we should just develop bhakti, and everything, all wonderful qualities and detachment, everything naturally manifests.
Also, imitation is one thing. Another thing is, imitation is one reason person may be wanting to externally renounce. Also in today's Kali Yuga, actually things have become very difficult also. Like the job aspects, etc., or the family life, etc., cooperation from between husband and wife, all this is just falling off. So a person may, due to those, like Krishna says in 18th chapter, that the detachment or renunciation due to not getting happiness or frustrations, like in mode of passion or ignorance.
Yeah.
So that kind of renunciation also, though it's not coming from Vandashram, neither it's coming from bhakti, but it's coming from frustrations of material. So that also
easy solution. escape from material problems. That's there. And then the other thing, but then the other problem is that if you're not qualified, then the escape route also becomes difficult, and then you can't practice either way. So sooner or later, we do have to realize our qualification and work within that, and there's difficulties either way for it. So therefore, we have to be very careful how we go forward. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, another place, I think Chaitanya Charitamrita says that it's like walking upstairs. So first you put one foot on the stair, and when that's steady, then you drop the other foot and keep it there. When they're both there, then you put the next foot up, and gradually when it's steady, then you put. So you gradually increase and increase and increase your level of commitment, but you can steady at one level before you can go to the next level. Then you get steady at that level, then you go to the next level. So generally, it's a gradual increase of qualification, not a sudden increase. So that's why over some time, then hopefully the person can, see his qualification.
In the same book, Chaitanya Shikshamrita, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he is suggesting that one who is at a Vaidhi sadhana, which means attraction is very less, and it's more or less inspiration or rather instruction, which is making him follow. Of course, there is some taste, as you said, within the Shabda itself, there is humility and there is some desire for making relationship with Krishna. But then more or less the attraction to Maya is so strong. So there he is suggesting that a Vaidhi sadhana bhakta should continue therefore his varnashram duties while simultaneously trying to advance in bhakti.
Yeah.
So could we say that in today's situation also that is a similar way a progressing devotee should see? That you should not quickly try to just renounce, rather keep on increasing, as you said, step by step coming.
Yeah. That's true. Also, of course, we can say that the ashram system is a system of gradual renunciation as well. So they have built into the varnashram system some sort of renunciation aspect as well. So as your bhakti advances, then you could go further up in your ashramas, and get more and more renounced. So there's a formalized way of that goes along with the bhakti, but it has to go along with the bhakti. It should not be independent of the bhakti. Also, in the case of a person practicing devotion. And also usually in that system it goes along with age. So you go through brahmachari, then grihastha, then vanaprastha, and then sannyas. So you're going to be very old by the time you're a sannyasi anyway, or even a vanaprastha. You're going to be over 50 years old. So generally they all become grihasthas, so they don't escape from family duties or whatever in that system at all. They still have to do those duties there. And then after that, then they start renouncing. So we can say in that sense that's a gradual system of renunciation also in the varnashram system.
Anybody else? Is there any questions? Otherwise we'll go to the next.
Of course, Raganuga Bhakti operated also within the varnashram system, basically. The only persons who weren't there were the Babajis. But otherwise, most of even those practicing Raganuga from Lord Chaitanya's time onward were grihasthas. And that's how the lines were carried on, largely through grihastha, diksha lines, etc.
One question which comes up is genuine devotees who want to advance may feel that grihastha can only practice some sort of sakam bhakti. He may not be able to practice pure bhakti. So is it true because they have to interact with matter so much with, like, say, office job, etc. In today's world, even like software companies, etc. So then, is it that they cannot do Shuddha Bhakti, they can only do Sakam Bhakti while they are in the office?
Well, the Sudha Bhakti is not concerning what you do in the material world. It's concerning your acts of devotion. In other words, hearing, chanting, remembering, that's the Bhakti. Working in the office is not an Anga Bhakti. So, yes, it's Sakama, we can say, or whatever, to maintain your family, but that's not a part of Bhakti. So we're only concerned about the Angas of Bhakti. So when we hear and chant and remember, but we have material goals to achieve through that. We want to get something for ourselves out of that for enjoyment. That is called Sakama Bhakti. So you can work and everything, but in your practice of devotion, you're not praying to Krishna to get material results. So then, if you're not doing that, and you're only trying to attain a higher stage of bhakti with bhava and prema, then it's called Sudha Bhakti, in spite of the fact that you're working or whatever.
So now one can go one more step ahead than this, and one can see that I can integrate my office job. Someone can think like this, that why to even do just the karma of the office, if I can also get a situation like His Grace Ranga Krishna Prabhu, like he is having a sort of a job which he is connected to Krishna only. He is giving Krishna Prasadam to others, and he is also providing to the temple, etc. So is it not more intelligent for those devotees that now they can even integrate it with Krishna?
Well, yeah. If they can possibly use their job somehow, Krishnaize the job, then that's even better. Then even that becomes a type of bhakti, isn't it? Because we are distributing prasadam, so that is bhakti and whatever. So yeah, if you can actually, your job that you support yourself with, you can somehow make it more Krishna conscious, it's very good.
So, but the fear comes that, is that not Sakam Bhakti?
No, because the main idea is that we're still trying to attain Krishna. We're not mixing up the angas of bhakti with, material desires or whatever.
A similar thing can happen in brahmacharis. Like a brahmachari may think that, if I just chant and hear, I'm doing Shuddha Bhakti. But the moment I'm asked to do something else, for example, washing or any other activity which is not chanting and hearing, So then he may feel like this is
Well,
sakam.
in terms of temple, then, but that's all bhakti, because cleaning the temple or doing that's all bhakti. Maybe the only thing that isn't bhakti would be bathing yourself, maybe, or something like that. But otherwise, it's all service in the temple, huh? So then it is part of bhakti also. Like Ambarish, he would clean the temple and decorate the temple and do so many things. That was all part of angas of bhakti.
Well, the thing which comes up is sometimes devotees feel that I have a particular inclination to do something, some services, and I do not have an inclination to do some other type of services. So then they say, if I am engaged to do some other type of services which are not my svabhava, then I am doing sakam bhakti.
No.
Maybe when he's trying to do the services he only likes, maybe that's sakam bhakti, because he's yielding to his, let's say, his material inclination or something. I like, these type of things, computer things I will do, but I won't do the manual things or whatever like that for Krishna. So maybe that's influence of his material attraction there. So anyway, the devotee, maybe neophytes, of course, they obviously find some activities easier than others. Others are more difficult. So there's nothing wrong with that. And if they're given a preference, then they can choose the easier one to do. Now, those who are more advanced, then they're always eager to serve Krishna anyway. And they find any opportunity as an opportunity for service, and they're eager to do it. So that's a more advanced devotee.
Maharaj, between Ruchi and Asakti, in Ruchi, bhajan is more emphasized, and in Asakti, Krishna. So, does it mean that he will reduce his bhajan and...
No. He's still doing the bhajan, but in the bhajan, he's tasting Krishna more. And in Ruchi, he's tasting the sadhana of that anga of bhakti. So yeah, in Ruchi, he likes the kirtan, but in Asakti, he likes Krishna in the kirtan. Name is non-different from Krishna, so he's chanting the name of Krishna in the kirtan, and he likes that name because it's Krishna.
Coming to the stage of devotion, like person like me, when I chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra, or when I try to do any service, I try to recall the forms of the Lord, because I a relationship to the Lord, not forcefully, but chant Hare Krishna. Naturally, there is a desire to make a relationship with Krishna. But then, at what stage actually Krishna's form will come naturally to our heart? Is it asakti?
Yeah. Well, asakti, we see the reflection manifesting there, and then bhava, there's an actual realization. The actual thing is there. So before that, it's not the zero, but it's just it's much more vague, we say, and then it becomes concentrated in asakti, where there's great attraction for Krishna himself.
So from asakti onwards, now it becomes natural.
Yeah.
The Lord's form is.
Yeah.
So before those stages, can we pray like this? That, my dear Lord, please appear in my heart as I'm chanting your holy name.
Yes. Yeah.
Great. Any questions on this stage? Otherwise, we'll go to Bhagavad Gita verses.
Maharaj, it is also described that there is karma mishra bhakti with the desire for bhakti, which is not sakam bhakti, but he is practicing, he is mixing the angas of karma with bhakti, but with the desire.
Okay. Yeah, that's a Jiva Goswami. He distinguishes, actually, his definition is a little bit different from the general, like Vishwanath's definition of karma mishra bhakti. So in Jiva's definition, karma mishra bhakti can be the mixing of the angas of karma yoga or varnashram with the bhakti, not necessarily with the desires that go with it. So he says nothing wrong with that. So it still can be pure bhakti. So we can do pure bhakti, and along with that, maybe you can do your Sandha Vandanas and your Shraddha ceremonies and all of that. And even some daily activities of the Varnashram system, duties, etc. But without any desire for punya, etc. Then there's no problem in that. So there's something like the Parinishita devotee. He does his activities of Varnashram along with his things. Of course, they generally are favorable activities anyway, helping to control the senses, etc. Similarly with jnana, you could do some angas of jnana, such as living in a solitary place or concentration on studies or whatever like that. Huh? And as long as it's not unfavorable, then they can be done. And as long as there's no desire for liberation, then it could be practiced also. And then the other one is where you do the angas with desires. And the other is you don't have any angas at all, other angas except bhakti, but you do have material desires, or desire for liberation. So that's another type, which Vishwanath includes as Tamagun Bhaktis, Rajagun Bhakti, and Sattvagun Bhakti. That is no angas, so other things mixed in it, but desires, Tamagun desires, Rajagun desires, or Sattvagun desires. Sattvagun desires would lead to liberation, and the other ones would lead to material things, and Sarga, Loka, etc., and less.
Maharaj, then, if a person is practicing this Karma Mishra Bhakti with a desire for Bhakti, isn't it that he will end up with a Shantarasa or something like that?
Not necessarily. If he's completely detached from those activities, then he's like the Parinishta devotee. Now, if he does have attachment, as in the case of the Sonishta Bhakta, then he gets Krama Mukti. He goes to higher planetary systems, gradually he becomes more purified, and then finally he goes to the Lord.
Goes to which level?
But he can go anything along according to his sadhana and his aspirations, I suppose.
Which means he also to
Yeah.
Dwarka,
Yeah.
Mathura, Vrindavan.
But those who continue with material desires mixed in their bhakti, all the way up, then they can get Salokya, Saraswati, etc. They get purified, but their bhakti is weaker because they did have those attachments. So therefore, they may get Shantarasa in the case of a Jnani, or very weak Shantarasa with not seeing the Lord at all in the spiritual world, is meditating on him from that mixture of material desires.
Then only if we do Kevala Bhakti, we go to Vraja, isn't it, Maharaj?
Well, you can go to Vaikuntha also. Well, in other words, you can do pure bhakti with no mixture of anything, and then you go to Vaikuntha and get Dasya Rasa. And if it's with Krishna, and then two things. You can go to Dwarka if you have Vaidhi Bhakti or whatever. And if you have Raganuga Bhakti, no concept. But then you go to Gokul in the spiritual world, or Vrindavan. And if you have Vaidhi Bhakti but for Krishna in Vrindavan, then you go to Aishwarya Goloka. where you see Krishna as the cowherd boy, but with awe and reverence also.
Is it that everyone has to come give up the angas of karma and jnana at one point or the other to do pure bhakti?
No. We see the Parinishta Bhakti doesn't do that. Or we see the Pandavas or whatever, they're still doing those activities. But they're not attached to them. They're not trying to get punya out of them or anything. So there's no material, it doesn't impede their devotion to the Lord. In fact, they're doing the duty to the Lord because the Lord ordered them to do that. So therefore, it's also part of their bhakti. It's part of their bhakti, and there's no material desire there. Okay, I'll just read the thing. This confidential knowledge may never be explained to those who are not austere or devoted or engaged in devotional service, nor to one who is envious of me.
68.
Oh, you want the next one? Okay. For one who explains this supreme secret to the devotees, pure devotional service is guaranteed, and at the end he will come back to me. Therefore, generally, it is advised that Bhagavad Gita be discussed among the devotees only. For those who are not devotees who will understand neither Krishna nor Bhagavad Gita. Those who do not accept Krishna as he is and Bhagavad Gita as it is should not try to explain Bhagavad Gita whimsically and become offenders. Bhagavad Gita should be explained to persons who are ready to accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is a subject matter for the devotees only and not for the philosophical speculation. Anyone, however, who tries sincerely to present Bhagavad Gita as it is will advance in devotional activities and reach the pure devotional state of life. As a result of such pure devotion, he is sure to go back to Godhead. So, this is the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita. And in that previous verse and this verse, he's stating that there's certain persons you should not preach to. Don't preach to the faithless persons, to the people that are envious, the people who don't have devotion because this is confidential knowledge. It is very secret. And then in this particular verse, he's saying that you preach to the devotees, give the secret to the devotees. And then he guarantees that you will come to me. So, therefore, in preaching to another person, we have to look at the qualification of the individual. And the outline is given in relation to the Madhyam Adhikari. Madhyam Adhikari worships the Lord. He avoids the demons, the materialists. He is merciful to the innocent and is friends with the devotees. So there we have two things relating to devotees. He's friendly with the devotees and he's merciful and gives instruction to the innocent. So we can take these both as types of devotees, because we see that the instruction is we don't preach to the faithless, but those persons with faith we can preach to, even if they may not be practicing. So therefore the innocent persons, we can say persons who have an inclination for the Lord, though they may not be practicing and they may not have knowledge. So one can give the message to such persons. To persons who are hostile, then definitely we avoid. And to those who are real devotees practicing, of course, then we don't really have to give them the message, but we can discuss the details for inspiration. So, a devotee, therefore, has to distinguish between different types of persons that he meets. And he has to be intelligent enough to distinguish someone who is slightly favorable, someone who's completely not favorable, someone who's more favorable, etc. And based on that, then he can carry out this instruction to give the secret to the devotees, but not to the envious and others. But even in this making this distinction, then there are sub-distinctions, because he can only reveal certain things to certain types of people again. So in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I teach you a secret. Then he talks about more or less, you're not the body or the, Brahman or whatever like that. Then I'll teach you more secret, Paramatma. Then I teach you the greatest secret, Bhakti. So according to the types of persons also, they may have a little spiritual interest or more spiritual interest or whatever, then we can give certain things.
There's certain people that have general spiritual things. Okay, we can talk, you're not the body, you're the Atma, etc., etc. And they probably appreciate that because they may have some interest in Brahman and merging in Brahman or whatever. We don't know what their mind is, but they have some general spiritual thing, but it may be contaminated. So anyway, we can talk about Atma from Bhagavad Gita. But if we speak to those people about Krishna, then they may get offended because they may be impersonalists or whatever, so we can't preach that to them. But they could develop, it's simply by conditioning that they have this idea that, everything is Brahman or whatever. But if they get educated properly in your Bhagavad, then they could gradually accept. So in the beginning, we may not be able to preach to those persons and give direct the highest secret of bhakti. We may only give them the you're not the body type of thing. Which is exactly what Krishna does also in Bhagavad Gita. He starts out with you're not the body. And it's only when he gets to chapter 6 and 7 he talks about, I'm the Supreme Lord, everything comes from me. So even to Arjuna, he gives gradual introduction into bhakti. So, and then even if we're talking to the innocent people, we start having to make distinctions, and according to the level or qualification of the person, and then we have to use our intelligence to preach in a certain way. And this will be more productive for them. Then the highest secret, of course, here is what she's talking about here is Sarvadhamma Parajaja Mamikam Sharanam Vraja, that only do bhakti, etc. That's the highest one of all. So there we can preach that to people who are more devotional, more fixed in devotion. You may not be able to say that to the innocent people who don't know anything about bhakti. They may think you're very fanatical when you say that. But
one who has some knowledge of what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita and has words of faith in the words of Krishna, etc., by exposure to it, then he can accept that. So, therefore, according to the individual person, even if they're innocent, then we have to start making distinctions again, and according to their level, we can preach certain things. So, ultimately, we should reveal the highest secret. But it's a matter of when we do to that particular person, in the beginning or later on, according to their level. But we can never avoid getting to this highest level. So we have to go beyond simply, you're not the body, you're the Atma, etc. And finally begin to discuss about the nature of Bhagavan, his qualities, his activities, and the relationship through bhakti. We have to get into those details eventually. So that's the highest secret. And therefore he says he speak it only to the devotees, because only one who's got a little bit of background of devotion can actually accept and appreciate those things. If he's a very fixed devotee, then he'll already know this, so you don't have to preach to him at all. But if he's got some knowledge but not complete knowledge, then one can talk to them. So in that discussion of the Madhyamadikari, then it says that one is friendly with the devotees. And one gives instruction to the innocent people. And then one is friendly with the devotees, which means they're obviously on a more equal level. So then among devotees, we can also exchange knowledge, but it happens in a little bit different way. With the neophytes or the Kanishtas, then we give instructions because they're on a lower level. And among the devotees, then we discuss the topics. We're not exactly teaching or instructing a person, but we're discussing and with another person who's more or less on an equal level. So that discussion is also very, very valuable for the person. As described in Bhagavad Gita itself, that the devotees discuss among themselves. So this is another way in which we can advance in devotional service. So this is done, I could say, in a friendly way. The devotee makes friends with other devotees of equal status. So they discuss among themselves. So this is also mutually, it helps the devotees, both devotees, advance in devotional service.